Love to hear a Bob White singing his song. See a big buck on a frosty dawn. Watch our kids catch their first bluegill. See them laugh and hear them squeal. We weren't born into it, but it fits us just right. We thank the Father for his guiding light. We knew we were blessed with this kind of living. That's why we want to keep on giving back to farm life. True North farm life. It's a great life. True North farm life.
Hello, True North Farm Life listeners. It's February the 2nd, and I've got Thomas Cooper here and myself, Chris Hinkle. How you doing today, Thomas?
I'm warming up finally, man.
Warming up? Has it been cold where you been? What's going on?
I think the entire state knows exactly what I'm talking about right now, man.
We've been in
cold.
Yeah, we've been in Snowmageddon for about a week, and I can't remember really the last time in Arkansas that we've seen snow stick around for a week. It's been a while.
I told my grandpa the exact same thing today. I was like, man, I feel like I've been looking at snow for the last month. It's been on the ground forever, which tells you how cold it's been and the type of snow we got. And it's, I feel like I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I'm glad to have it behind us.
Amen. I mean, we've got 60-degree temperatures in our forecast for the end of the week, and we'll be fishing before too long. I can feel it already. The turkeys are already starting to do their things a little bit. I've been getting a few more pictures, but what have you been seeing over the last week? Maybe different, or maybe it's not different, but I've been noticing some different things on my farm while the snow's been on. But kind of what's been going on in your neck of the woods?
Man, pretty typical right now. It's just keeping up with the cattle and making sure everything's fed. But as far as wildlife on the property goes, I had a few cameras that were, basically on a field edge where I left some behind. The cattle couldn't get to it. It was growed up, not the best stuff in the world, but I've seen the majority of the turkeys on the property on that edge. If you go to a field right now that has my cattle in it, everything's pretty grazed down, and anytime you get 7 to 8 inches of snow and then it stays cold and down in the single digits for 2 or 3 days and everything stays on, it's hard for a turkey to make a living when he's scratching everything out from under him trying to find something to eat.
That's right. Yes, you probably find them around your cows and where you're feeding them quite a bit this time of year, I would imagine.
Yeah. They're sticking around, which as a landowner who's keeping on things, it tells me I don't have enough food, man. I don't have enough food. That's something we got to work on next year.
Yeah, food is king, and I went to the farm a couple times over the past couple weeks, and the snow, we got about the same amount, probably 6 inches there at the farm, but the difference is that I had quite a bit of soybeans, standing corn, that kind of stuff, and I don't know like how many deer I have on the farm right now, but I'll just tell you that it's in the tune of around 350 pictures a day. That's about what I've been averaging since the snow has kind of hit and held. But new bucks, there's a lot of bucks that have already shed that I'm going to be looking for them here in the near future. But yeah, it's exciting time of the year. You're seeing a lot of activity. What I like is actually getting out and looking in the woods too, because you see where all these deer have walked and where their main travel routes are, and some of them that I didn't even think about, to be straight up. I'm like, I thought deer might be coming through here, but after you go and look, it's definite that they're using it. And new stand locations. I picked out even another one yesterday when I was on the farm looking around a little bit. All the tracks kind of led to one area. It pinched them down in between the creek and actually my pond dam there, and there was just a beat, looked like a cattle trail going through there where all the deer kind of neck down. So I think I might have to have maybe a blind right there on the bank of the pond. So it'll be the new pond stand is what we'll call it, but it'll be kind of unique. I actually wanted to be in a tree there along the creek, but just the way the wind would blow from there with a south wind is what you would have to hunt it. I need to be on that pond dam is about the most effective way to hunt it. And I could even pop up a pop-up blind there on the dam as well and hunt out of it. But and I've got a hay bale blind that I'll probably end up setting up there just for, during hunting season kind of stuff. But seeing all the new trails and where all the game's moving, that's just so exciting to me. And the turkeys are all flocked back up right now, and seeing them all out in the beans and seeing them, do their thing right now. I've got pictures yesterday of two strutting gobblers in the snow right in front of the camera. It was pretty cool. But it's starting to get that time of the year, always after the first of the year, my mind kind of switches to turkeys more. And matter of fact, leaving Monday, Thomas, we got the National Wild Turkey Federation National Convention in Nashville, Tennessee. That's a lot to say. National Wild Turkey Federation Convention in Nashville, Tennessee. It's quite
a bit. You think a guy could walk himself to death there at the national convention?
So I always joke with everybody saying that it's just my warm up for turkey season, right? Because you walk so many miles there that I don't know if you've ever been to the Opryland Hotel, but the Opryland Hotel is literally on 40 acres. So think about that, a hotel on 40 acres. And there's multiple, I don't know, there's probably 5 or 6 levels of it. And then there's rooms on each level and conference rooms, and you got to be here and you got to be there. And then you walk the show floor, right? The NWTF Convention Sports Show is by far one of the best shows that I've ever been to. It's so cool, and the people, I think that's what makes it the most special. It seems like the people are always so good to each other, so receptive, and it's just a great time to be a part of it. My wife and I love going each and every year, and it's just been kind of a special time, over this week of February for us to get there. But a lot of good things in store. I know the NWTF is announcing some new things for this year. Probably a lot of stuff surrounded around research. So that's kind of been their biggest initiative over the course of the last couple years, and the University of Georgia and getting a endowed professorship there, through Dr. Chamberlain. That's been huge. And, Dr. Chamberlain is the spokesperson for the NWTF, the NWTF biologist. And, it's just been pretty cool to see that. And what I think about a lot of times is, how are we going to keep this ball rolling? Like, how are we going to make sure that our kids have places to hunt and that they are, the game is being looked out for in a way that we would want it, looked out for. And so this research is going to go a long way towards that. And it'll last in perpetuity forever. So we'll have biologists studying turkeys for a long, long time. And that's pretty special.
Absolutely, man. Dr. Chamberlain, when I first started this habitat management stuff on my own and kind of, learning through, some baptism by fire, but, the information that I got that other than talking with the biologists here within the state, Chamberlain and Dr. Craig Harper, both of them, I've read and Googled and YouTubed and searched stuff. And a lot of times when you're looking at, specifically habitat management, Chamberlain, especially for turkeys, Chamberlain, you're going to see his name a lot, and then also Harper out of University of Tennessee.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever read the 10th Legion.
I'm staring at the book right now.
Yeah. Who's it say the author is there?
There's a guy that he used to hunt turkeys and still does a little bit. I can't remember. He was in the military,
Tom
Colonel Tom Kelly,
Colonel
I think.
Tom Kelly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what I love about Tom Kelly? I love to hear him talk.
Oh my gosh,
That's my
yes.
favorite thing, and it's not a wild turkey, it's a wild tookie,
That's
a
exactly
tookie,
that's
the
exactly
wild
right.
tookie. And I love hearing that. Just the way he talks about it just sounds so cool to me. And every time he talks about turkeys through his writing
Yes, it's
or
unbelievable.
through his speech, it's just
Yeah.
we completely relate to that, and that's so special, and it'll carry through the test of time, and that's great. But hey, something I wanted to talk to you guys about today, and it's been a hot topic here lately. And I'm not going to come on here and try to tell you this is my opinion about it. I'm not going to come on here and try to convince you otherwise. But I want to talk about CWD, chronic wasting disease. And this is amongst deer, and it's amongst, I think, now 30 states is what they've recorded now, 30 states within the U.S. that have chronic wasting disease. And so what I wanted to say is that, first of all, chronic wasting disease has to deal with the proteins in the body and how they're folded in certain ways, and when they get misfolded, it creates these certain things. And I'm not a biologist because this is my hillbilly understanding, so bear with me. But it creates problems within the body, and the problems end up going to the brain, and it causes some kind of neurologic problem with the brain that the brain starts to have problems. And this, from what the studies have shown, is that every deer that gets chronic wasting disease will die. That's what the studies have shown, the data has shown. Now, I know the state of Oklahoma is doing some things right now with releasing some deer into the wild that are not they're not immune to CWD. Let's get that straight. They're not immune to CWD, but they have a higher resistance to it. So they're releasing these deer into the wild in hopes that that gene will carry on to where it will lessen the chance. And let me say this. I like it. I like it from the standpoint that they're trying something. They're trying something that no other state is really trying, and they're doing what they feel is best for their state and their wildlife. Now, when you listen to people talk about CWD, and I'm talking biologists, and I mean, everybody's got an opinion, right? But when you listen to a biologist talk about CWD, it's not a very happy, enjoyable thing to listen to. When you listen to it, matter of fact, I listened to something the other day that at the end of it, I'm like, you know what? It just makes you want to feel like giving up, is what it makes you feel like. And I hate that part of it, right? Because, here's where it is. We really don't know the best ways to deal with it. We know what we can do. We've got some tools that we can use in certain instances. And then we know when it gets to a certain point that the tools no longer work, that you might end up with a deer density of 1 to 5 deer per square mile. And now how do you deal with it? So as land managers and as stewards of the land, we look at this and we're like, we've worked our whole entire lives to develop this piece of property to be the best that it can be. And we want to pass this on to our kids, to our grandkids, so they can enjoy the same things that we've enjoyed. But just think about the time, a time and place, and I'm not saying that it will happen, but I'm just saying that a lot of the pictures that I get painted for me when the CWD topic comes up with biologists is that one day there'll be deer hunting as we know it today will not be again. For instance, right now, I might have 4 or 5, 4.5 to 6.5-year-old bucks on my property. Well, when you get down the road with CWD, the oldest one might be 3.5. And we as land managers don't want to hear that. That's not what I want to hear. And I'll tell you another thing. You know, we just come through a period in time called COVID. And you're probably thinking to yourself, well, how does COVID relate to CWD, right? Well, you know, COVID is not exactly what we thought it was in the beginning. Like we were told one thing, you know, you got to get vaccinated, you got to do this, you got to do that, you know, blah, blah, blah. You know, they're scaring us, right? Scare tactics. And don't get me wrong, people were dying from COVID. But we made it, right? We made it through, and we're on the other side of it. So when we hear things like CWD, and it could be way worse than we ever dreamed. We think about that, and we don't like what we hear. I don't like it. Hell, it pisses me off, to be straight up, because everything I've worked for, they're telling me one day it might not be there, and that hurts. It really does. But, you know, I've been thinking about this, and how do I personally deal with this? What do I do on my farm that might change something a little bit from my aspect? Now, one thought process would be, you know what? I'm just going to do what I do. I'm not going to change a thing about what I do, and let the cards fall where they may. That's one way to look at it, and that's probably a lot of people's way to look at it, to be straight up. I'm a little bit different. I like to think that I'm constantly studying the deer. Not that I'm a biologist, but I watch them. You can bet that I watch them. I study them every time I'm in the stand. I study them every time I'm walking through the woods. I study them every day. I'm studying the habits of a deer. And when I'm studying them deer, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, what's this all going to come to? This CWD thing, and how's it going to affect my farm? So what I've been thinking about with my farm is this. You know, you don't have to get a deer tested for CWD unless, like in my county, if you was to kill a deer on the opening weekend of rifle season, you were supposed to take it to a CWD check station, and they would pull some samples, and if it was CWD positive, they would let you know about it.
And this was in Missouri.
This was in Missouri. It's different for every state, every area. It's different, and even counties. Some counties and states are different. But what I would say is this: I'm going to start taking a few more deer off my property, and you might ask, well, why would you do that? Well, the first thing that I'm going to do is I've now got a goal of 10 deer a year for the next 3 years. That's what I want to take off my property. And I don't think it's too aggressive. And the reason I don't think it's too aggressive, because I really feel like my deer density is probably a little higher than it needs to be. And if you got a higher deer density, you're probably a little more susceptible to CWD, right? Because they're interacting more, they're more around each other, and CWD has been found in my county. Okay, that's another known fact. Not specifically where I'm located, but in the county, it has been found before. So what I'm going to do is my goal was to take 10 deer a year for the next 3 years and have every single one of those deer tested for CWD. Now, I'm not a mathematician. I don't know that, it's a qualified, quantified study, but the hillbilly in me thinks that if I take 30 deer off my property in 3 years and not one of them tests positive for CWD, I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would too, especially if it's in my county. I agree with, everything that you said too, man. And you hit on something right there at the beginning. You said, there's a lot of people, landowners, whoever, guys, gals, that, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And, whatever happens, happens. And I see that a lot. And it's not just with hunting either. It's with everyday life. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm going to do. And, if it doesn't change, it doesn't change. No big deal. It's not necessarily the right way to go about it either. I started, but even before CWD, and, I say I'm a turkey guy, I'm a deer guy, I'm a squirrel guy, it doesn't matter if it's walking on the farm, I'm here for you. I'm going to try to make things better. But I started with, I wanted more turkeys. And, of course, obviously my property's in Arkansas, and state of Arkansas, in certain counties you can bait. I know in other counties there's a time limit to when you can put corn out or whatever your bait of choice is. And, at the farm we had ran spin cast feeders, 2 or 3 of them. It's something my grandpa enjoys doing. I don't have a whole lot of say in it. You know what? If he likes doing it, paint it pink and rub some funk on it, man. I'm all about it. But one thing that we did start doing, I don't run them year round anymore. If my grandpa had the opportunity, he was going to fill it up. There's a couple of spots on the farm now that he particularly hunts, and then some youth hunters hunt that, we got a feeder out. But the reason I slowed down just on feeders and, feeding at certain spots was alpha toxin. We feed a lot of, if somebody's putting out bait for deer, usually it's whole kernel corn, and everything loves whole kernel corn. Mm-hmm. And the stuff that you're pouring out on the ground, especially in the summertime or spring, and that humidity gets in there and it starts molding, it is bad news for turkeys, man. And, I cut back on it tremendously. Now, it was a conversation to be had with the boss, but, we cut back on it tremendously. And, in the fall we'll feed, which if you're going to, it's a lot better to feed in the fall than it is, everybody loves velvet pictures. I'm one of those guys. Mm-hmm. When that corn's sitting out there on the ground sweating, and then you got a group of turkeys come in, it's bad news. So with that being said, that's how I slowed down on my baiting at the farm. And, the more I educated myself on the alpha toxin stuff, and you can't really scroll through social media anymore without seeing something on CWD. And then educating myself, on a small scale, and figuring out how, CWD is transmitted, bait sites. It's not conducive for what they're saying and how this stuff is getting passed along. And it is a fear of mine. I don't think anybody's going to waste that much, that many resources to try to figure something out and it not be, real, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. It makes perfect sense. The thought process that that these governmental agencies are trying to get federal money because they can locate CWD in a county. Really? I mean, is that what people really are thinking? I'm telling you, it's further from the truth. This disease will inevitably cost the state institutions, the game and fish commissions, thousands on millions of dollars. You think about that, to get testing done on all these animals, to have to maybe selective harvest some of these animals, let's just talk about what could happen. What if we get down to where there's one deer per square mile? How many people are buying licenses? I mean, it's a real topic, right? And you know, I look at this. The duty of a state, like a game and fish commission of a state, is to conserve and protect the wildlife in that state. That's first. Now you got the public, right? But if there's no deer to hunt, how happy do you think the public will be?
Hunter satisfaction would go down tremendously, I can promise.
Tremendously. Now, it might not be something that every hillbilly can understand as far as the disease, and I get that, because right now, what I'm hearing is not a lot of good solutions, right? If we find a kind of a target area where a lot of positives have been found, I say the governmental agency will go in some states. I'm not saying all states do this, but they might go in targeted area and take out a lot of deer. At night, through baiting, through night vision. Anyway, they'll take out a lot of deer in a certain area to reduce that population. But here's the part of that gets me. This is the part that resonates with me in this disease, that scares the hell out of me, is that, from my understanding from a biologist, that they have had a deer die, and let's just say decomposes, and then they put another non-infected deer. That deer died of CWD. They put another non-infected deer in the same area, and it contracted the disease too after that deer was dead. So the disease didn't die with the deer. It did, but it still had prions. This is something, prions, right? I've never seen a prion in my life. I don't know what it is, okay? But I hear the term all the time. But a prion is in there in that soil for years. They can't tell me how long, but it's years. All right? So if that grass or that soil or whatever, it grows up, it can transfer that to the next deer. That's what scares the crap out of me about this disease. Not just does it die with a deer. That's one thing, right? EHD. Let's talk about EHD real quick. EHD is something that a lot of hunters think is worse than CWD, right? And why do we think it's worse than CWD? Here's why. Because at one point in time, we can walk in the woods and we can see death, we can smell death, and it's everywhere. That's why EHD seems a lot worse. However, after EHD events, 3 to 4 years later, we've bounced back really good. Really good. CWD is not the case. CWD has started many years ago, and it's taking decades to get to where it is today. And because it's hit so slow, everybody's kind of numb to it a little bit. Like, you know what? Man, this thing's been, the first case was in the late 60s. This thing's been around for 50 years. 60 years. Why are we getting scared of it now? It's been around for 60 years. Well, it has been around, but the prevalence rate has increased dramatically. Now, we've seen ebbs and flows of deer populations over the years. We've seen that. We have. But with some of these cases that we're seeing now with some of the areas, let's take Northwest Arkansas, for instance. It's probably one of the newest studies that's been done. And there's some counties that have, I shouldn't say counties, areas that have a 1 to 5 deer per square mile. Now think about that. Think about if that was your prime hunting spot that you bought 20 years ago to put it in your family forever. And now that's what you've got on the landscape. So how do we deal with it, right? I'm not going to lean one way or another. I'm just telling you what I'm going to do on my farm, right? How I'm going to try to evaluate it, because I can just turn my head the other way, and I can look the other way and say, you know what? I'm just going to let it be. Whatever happens, happens, and I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. That's what I'm going to do. But if I don't do something, I will feel some kind of guilt 20 years from now that I didn't take it, for what it was. I just said that it was going to be something that was just going to pass, like anything else. It's just going to pass. And every year you see fewer deer and fewer deer until the point that you're like, I can definitely tell something has happened. And by that time, I'm going to tell you, by the time you can tell something has happened, it's too late. That's what it is. It's too late. So what do you do? So like I said, I'm going to shoot 10 deer for the next 3 years. I'm going to have every one of them tested for CWD. And if I can take 30 deer off the landscape in my area and I don't have a single positive, I'll feel pretty good about it. And somebody might ask, well, what if you find one positive? Well, hey, that's definitely, I don't know. I really don't know what I'm going to do. And think about this, really, okay? I've been racking my brain over this for the past week or two. I try to make my property the best property in the country. That's what I strive to do. I try to make it the best deer property, the best turkey property, the best rabbit property, the best quail property. I try to make it the best property out of anywhere around me. But by doing that, what do? I attract more game, right? So let's just say, I'm just throwing this out there that we can talk about it. Let's just say that in my square mile, 640 acres, I own 160 of that. I do. Let's just say that I've got the premier habitat in that square mile, and I hold 70% of the deer in that square mile on my farm, because I've done such a good job of habitat development. I have great food year round. I just make it a mecca to want to hold a lot of deer. Well, for CWD reasons, have I just made my farm worse? Have I made my farm a host for CWD? I'm asking, what's your thoughts, Thomas?
I'd say you're pretty spot on. If you've got the food, water, and cover in a square mile, I mean, you're going to be the guy with the herd density. When everything that they've talked about and how it spreads, and you just said it. CWD doesn't leave with the deer. Once the deer dies, it's still, the bronze are still in the soil, still can be contracted by another deer. So, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think you made your problem a lot worse. That's what it sounds like.
This is just what makes it so hard.
Right. And I think I think you're doing the right thing, especially by getting on the phone and calling some guys and telling them to shoot some does. And I don't think there's enough done of that in the first place. I can remember, on my farm, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, it was nothing to go, on the north side of the farm to a plot we call the North Field. And you'd see 35, 40 deer a night. And it was, that's what happened. And, you look at your food plots, you look at everything, and it looks like a golf course. And it kind of started, I was like, man, what's the issue? What's the deal? And had too many deer. And for 3 years, I think, the last 3 years, I called everybody that I could call. One man only has a certain amount of tags, and we started shooting some does. And believe it or not, the deer hunting got a lot better. It really did. The rut was wide open, and this was 3, 4, 5 years down the road. So this is not something you do overnight. It's like anything we always talk about. It's eating the elephant, man. You got to start somewhere, and I think you'll be glad looking back 10 years from now that you started, especially on your end and your county, and after everything you said, I'd get to shooting some deer, man.
Yeah, it's just, for me, it's somewhat of a peace of mind a little bit. But, the second thing is that, I struggle with it a lot with CWD conversations, because there's not a lot of hope when you listen to educated people talk about it. And, they're educated people for a reason. And we look up to those folks to give us advice, to steer us in the right direction for managing your properties. And when you hear the CWD thing come up, there's just not a lot of hope in a lot of situations. Now, there has been a few cases where they've said that, hey, we think we got it under control. And, hey, but I'm going to tell you, there's 100 cases out there where they don't, right? And there's a couple cases that they feel they did. So it's not a recipe for, I don't feel that it's a recipe for us to, to get out of this situation. It's a recipe for us to deal with it, so to speak. And so, I just don't want to get to the point where, we're, and I know some of our, my grandfather, used to say that, hey, listen, I'd hunt for 3 days to see a couple deer. That's the way it was in certain times of the year, in certain places. But, we have lived through some really good times, Thomas, of quality hunting and some of the best. You think of turkeys, right? The 90s and early 2000s, off the hook, right? Best we've ever seen. But how do we judge everything? We judge everything now based upon what we've seen in the 90s and the 2000s, right? We think because we've seen an incredible amount of turkeys in that time period that it should be like that every year and all years. But that's just not the way wildlife works. It's not the way nature works. You go through time periods like this year, there's a ton of rabbits. I don't know what happened. I was talking with a guy the other day. He's like, man, where did the rabbits come from? But they are everywhere, right? And I think we go through that sometimes with turkeys or whatever the case, predators. Hey, where'd all the coons come from, right? But, we go through that nature flow of you have really good reproduction years for maybe 4 or 5 in a row, and you get just this plethora of game, and it's just unbelievable, and we enjoy that part of it, right? But because we've seen it before, that's what we expect every year. And hey, first of all, I'm happy that we got a lot of smart people in this world, biologists, to study things like this, because I don't know that that you know, I just don't know how we deal with it without science. Going forward, I don't know how we deal with it. My hopes with CWD, I'll tell you my hopes, is that one day they will find some kind of gene that does resist completely, immune to CWD, or they develop some kind of feed that will get rid of CWD or make them resistant to it. That's my hope, is that's what would be developed one day. But that's a hillbilly's hope in something that I don't know that could ever be done. But I mean, we've hoped that we had a cure for cancer for how long now, right? And still people pass away from it each and every year. So, I know we'll get through this, and I wanted to talk about CWD for a little bit today, but Thomas, any more thoughts that you kind of have on the subject? And I guess one more thing that I will talk about a little bit is that I think, and this is, I said I wasn't going to have a personal view on it. I've got a personal view on one thing. I think we are more likely for CWD to spread feeding deer in a corn pile that's in a single corn pile or in a single feeder that deer come, that's, let's say, a gravity flow feeder, because how are deer contracting it? They're contracting it through saliva. They're contracting it through feces. They're contracting it through through their urine. They're contracting it through all these things. So if you think about that, a deer eating in one particular spot, they're doing all of that in one spot. So the likelihood of them to transmit that disease to another one is probably one of the more likely times that we have for that to happen. So, in my opinion, my pea-brain opinion, is that would be one of the things that I would not do at all with CWD. I know some people have corn piles that you can see from Google Earth, right? And then, but here's what I'm saying is this, is that, yeah, you might be able to track that deer to there, but how many deer came there and ate that had CWD? And here's the other thing. I know that we say in some states that, well, we'll just allow you to feed during the season. Well, okay, I get it. So you can, shoot the deer that come in. Well, if you shot every deer that came into that feed pile, that'd be different. But you ain't. What you're doing is you're shooting 1 out of 50. That's what we're doing. We're shooting 1 out of 50 that is coming into. And I'm not saying, I don't know how many deer come into corn pile. It's different for every place. But let's just say that you got 20 deer that come there and you harvest 1 or 2 of them. So 18 of them come there. And if you had one that was infected, maybe 17 are infected now. I'm just throwing that out there. It just seems more likely, right? But a deer is a wild creature. You're not going to control them. They're all the time socializing. I mean, a mama is licking on a little one, and she's, they go through the rut, all that stuff. It's all social. Bucks are getting in fights, right? So, it's a hard subject. It's a really hard subject for us to talk about, and I know it's hard for the public. We are the public, but it's just hard for everybody to talk about. We don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Makes me mad. But at the end of the day, am I going to be mad about it, or am I going to figure out what I'm going to do on my property to try to do something about it, be somewhat proactive in some areas? Any final thoughts, Thomas?
Yeah, I think I think you hit the nail on the head, though. Is like just be proactive, and if I could tell anybody that listens to this, we're talking about it, we're sharing our opinions, and just telling you what we're doing personally on our farms. But just like with anything else, have your own opinion, educate yourself. I promise you, go to Google and type in CWD and you'll get all you want. And, just educate yourself. And, I would say after you've looked over what you feel is necessary, then form your opinion on it.
That's right. Try to educate yourself before you form an opinion. Yeah. That would be my advice. Don't just listen to somebody at the coffee shop, right, that says, hey, listen, this CWD thing's a hoax. And listen, Thomas and I, we sell properties for a living, and we're on farms each and every day. And I will tell you this, that every farm that I go on, that I'm in a CWD area, I ask them, are you finding dead deer? And the answer is usually no, I'm not finding dead deer. Well, not any more than normal. Well, what's normal? And I have it every year too. I have 1 to 2 to 3 deer that I find a year on my farm that's dead from whatever reason. I have no clue what it is. It could be shot. It could be had a buck this year that was right by the road. I'm assuming he got hit by a car. That's what I'm assuming, because he barely made it off the road, just onto the property a little bit. He could have been shot. Somebody could have shot him. Or, for all I know, that deer could have died of CWD. I don't know. I really don't know. But all I'm saying is this. Them deer that I found every year, I don't think anything of it. It's just one more deer that didn't make it through the season, and I look at that as natural causes, right? It was old age, or it got sick from something, it died, but I find 1 to 3 a year like that. I'm not finding 10. If I went on there and found 10, I'd be like, what's happened? And a lot of people that are finding like that many or more, it could be an EHD episode. Very well could be. But that's where CWD is the silent killer sometimes, is that it started decades ago. So is your 1 to 3 deer you're finding a year a CWD deer? I don't know. Do you know, Thomas?
I ain't got a clue, man.
I ain't got a clue. I can't say without a fact that it is or it's not. I can't say that. But one thing I can do is I can start testing the animals that I'm taking off the farm to give me some level of confidence that it's either there or not. I can do that. And it probably wouldn't even be a bad idea for that dead deer that I got on my farm now to try to get something from him to send off to test it. Even though it's not one that I killed, but it's still a specimen that I can have tested. So I may look at doing that. I'll get you to the farm to take care of that for me if you would.
Say when.
Hey, guys, it's been another great episode of the True North Farm Life podcast, and we really appreciate you joining in with us. If you need any help with any property that you have, call Thomas or myself at any time. We'd be happy to meet with you, talk with you about your property, how to make it better, and just overall, just anything land related. That's what we stand for. So until next week, we'll see you guys again. Thank you.
Take care, guys.
We love to hear a Bob White singing his song. See a big buck on a frosty dawn. Watch our kids catch their first bluegill. See them laugh and hear them squeal. We weren't born into it, but it fits us just right. We thank the Father for his guiding light. We knew we were blessed with this kind of living. That's why we want to keep on giving back to farm life. True North Farm Life. It's a great life. True North Farm Life.